Welcome everybody back to the Yosan University 39 Gen podcast. I have a really awesome guest with me today, and I would just like to tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Sean. I'm really glad to be here. I love Yosan University. It's the students have taught me more than I think I've taught them. But what I do is I'm the dean of InfiniChi Energy Healing, the foundation of medical Qigong. And I also have taught at Yosan University for over 25 years. And I have a private practice of Qigong, and I've worked for 22 years at the WeSpark Cancer Support Center, one day a week. And that has really been my primary Qigong teacher, having to work with serious diseases. Humbling and really an education all by itself.
It's really interesting. And I mean, you have been teaching Qi cultivation at Yosan for a long time. Before we get into how you got into Qigong, because I do want to ask you about that, I want to ask you, for people that are listening that don't necessarily understand the concept of Qi, how would you describe Qi to someone that's encountering the concept for the first time, especially within the context of healing?
Yeah, Qi is everywhere. Qi is a name for life itself. Qi is the energy of your breath. I had, most people who are Christian know of, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, or something like that. And one day I was doing Tai Chi on a Sunday morning, and I realized, God the Father didn't become human. So that's pure yang. And God the Son became human. Oh my God, that's yin, form. And the interaction of the breath of, form and no form, the exhale is what they would call the Holy Spirit. What we would call is animation, Qi, the animation of life. And so I suddenly realized in that moment that, oh my goodness, this is like every breath is animation. And that animation is in everything. Even rocks are animated. They just are moving too slow for us to see it. And everything has this life. I also heard something that really excited me is I was reading one of Hua Qingni's book, The Patriarch of Yosan University, and he was saying that Qi or spirit, the Tao, whatever you want to call it, is so humble, but it hides behind everything that's alive. It's the humbling life force of everything that's growing in the whole world. And I thought, wow, it hides behind everything. And so then I realized, in my thinking, it's a whisper. It's the whisper of life that flows through everything. And that's why every major religion, spiritual organization saying we have to get quiet to hear the whisper. You see, it's too noisy. It's too noisy. So when I say that Qi, mainly people don't see Qi because it's too noisy. And as soon as they take a class that either slows them down or harmonizes meditation, my first feeling of Qi was in a spiritual yoga class where we would do something with movement, and then she'd have us lie down between each movement and feel the prana. Now I went, there's something there. There's something there. So that excited me. So it was actually a yoga class that I experienced my first conscious Qi. And also driving the car once, it was a long ride, and I had nothing to do, and I was tired of the radio. And I put my hand out in the sun. I had the hand out, and I actually felt the sun. And for the first time, I was breathing the sun in my hand. And so simple exercises like that can start you to awaken that, oh my goodness, there's some unseen energy, the whisper of life behind it all. And that really is, that's what Qi to me is. It's in everything. It's just that it's so quiet we don't always become conscious of it.
I remember one day I was in a um, a train riding from London out to the outskirts of London, this small town called Reading, and I watched this father. It was a very hot train, very hot day, middle of summer, and people don't realize that England can get hot, but it can get hot. And it was very warm on this train. It was muggy, and all the windows were open, but they didn't open very far. And this father was just blowing air onto his son. And I rode with this family for about an hour on that train, just watching breath be breathed onto that son to cool the child and to calm them. And it was interesting to me because there was this great book called Where Air Becomes Breath, Where Breath Becomes Life or something. And it's about the space between, where is our respiration? Where are we beginning and ending? It's like, so this energy from this father was just being projected out onto this child. I'm going to cool my child. And he was doing it with breath. And years later, when I studied at Yosan, I was thinking about the concept of chi, and it struck me that there was this exchange of energy, just like that father was blowing that breath onto his child to cool them. And when I entered a medical Qigong class, someone was describing the concept of medical Qigong and the movement of Qi from one place to another, one person to another. And I was just like that. It always clicked for me that there was just this exchange. But I want to come back and ask, what is medical Qigong and what makes it unique to other styles of Qigong or other energetic practices? How is it different from yoga or something like that?
Well, when I explain Qi to my students, I say Qigong, for instance, that there's three kinds of Qigong. One is the movement kind.
Hmm.
Another where, there's called self-healing Qigong, a treasures Qigong. These are movement exercises of moving Qi, storing Qi, gathering it. And then there's guided visualization or meditation Qi, in which you can guide the Qi through your organ systems or healing. So that's an internal Qigong. But the other one is medical Qigong. And what we
Hmm.
learn is that if we can gather Qi, in other words, you really should cultivate Qi or learn to gather it before you help others. In other words, you your Qi should be a little stronger than the person you're working on, at least,
Yeah.
because that exchange is going to be important for your health as well as theirs. And so, medical qigong is where we learn how to not only gather qi, or heal ourselves, but how we can utilize qi. And here's the difference: we're not utilizing our qi. The really special thing about medical qigong taught at Yosan is we're going to gather the energies of the sky and the energies of the earth. And we're going to take that yin and yang and learn through a Qigong meditation protocol how not to use our energy. And that is really because Hua Qing Ni once said that Qigong healers usually die young around the world
Mm,
at around 55 or so. He said because they haven't mastered how not to use their own qi. They
mm,
get too involved. Let's say you're ambitious and you want to be a healer, the qigong healer to the stars. Well, you might get
mm,
then invested in using your own qi, and then that's a dangerous thing. So there's three qigongs. So we want to harness Mother Nature. Um, Nature is our first great teacher, and it's our greatest medicine. Um, and so if we can harness the pure yang of the sky and the pure yin of the earth and learn how to blend it and take it, we can not only put energy into someone's body, we can pull it out and learn
mhm.
how to pull it out safely and energetically. It's really exciting. In the beginning, when you're a student, uh, it doesn't seem quite real. And so there's three stages that I feel that when we do Qigong, the first stage is feeling it. And then, well, now I feel it, but am I really doing this? And then the second stage is you start to not only feel it, but it becomes real.
Mm,
So I was at the Cancer Support Center and I was working on my 55th person because I was documenting it. And I was thinking, when I started to work on this person, I said, you know what? I know I'm helping people. They say I'm helping it, but I just don't get it yet. I feel I'm just going through the motions. They say they feel better. And so I asked the universe. It was that day, the 55th person, I reached my hand forward and I pulled energy out of someone's liver, and I felt I had the hottest ember I've ever had in my life. My hand was burning, and I shook it into the ground as you're supposed to do, but I really shook it. And I went, oh my God, this is real. This is real. And it was the first time that chi, spirit, whatever you want to call it, showed me how real I was pulling poison out. And then I didn't have to
mm,
feel it again. So in the beginning, this chi work feels ethereal, and then it becomes a little more real, and then it becomes just knowing, oh my goodness, all this time, uh, I've all this invisible energy I haven't been aware of. And then you have
mhm,
more, I think, more reverence for the healing process because, oh my goodness, this is real. And then I thought, boy, I'd rather really cleanse after. I've been
mhm,
just cleansing because I thought I'm supposed to cleanse. Oh my God, this is real garbage I'm pulling out.
mhm,
So I always say, it's a step-by-step process of just going through, having some faith. Sincerity is showing up all the time. Just keep going at it. And the nice thing about Yosan is they've never let me down, the Knee family. I may have doubts, of what I'm doing, but eventually there's certainty. It's like, oh my goodness, this isn't theory anymore. This is real.
mhm. So true. How did you start down this journey? Because it's a remarkable journey that you've been on. How did you start down this path?
Well, I was lucky enough. I came out to Los Angeles with through a divorce, and I was raised Catholic, and so I was not only felt like I was kicked out of the relationship, but I was kicked out of the religion, and my
Mm,
family kicked me out because I was they didn't like the concept of divorce, so I was
mm,
really lost out here. And I came across a teacher, Hua Ching Ni, in a Tai Chi class, and I have to say I had the wrong intentions. A beautiful young lady said, "Would you like to go to my Tai Chi class?" And I and I went, spending the day with you. Of course, I had no intentions, and so with the wrong intentions, it started me on a journey of this old Chinese man that didn't know much English, just putting his hand out like a flag and calming me down, and just his hand became fingers that were quivering in the wind, and I just felt myself go like the first breath I'd taken in my life. And then when he did the Tai Chi, there was no lessons or anything. You just followed him. And it was following his energy that found out he was an acupuncturist. And then I went to him as an acupuncturist. And to show you how unevolved I was, because I came out here to be rich and famous and, you know, uh, and it took me 3 years before I said, is there more going on here than acupuncture? And he went,
mm,
perhaps you should take one of my classes. And it was his energy. So a lot of times, acupuncturists say, well, how can I build up my practice? And I say, build up your energy. It was just his energy that I kept coming back. And because I didn't know what was going on. And so 3 years later, I'm thinking, my life's changing. He says one word to me and my life changes. And I'm thinking, there's something more going on here. And, so I started taking classes, and that was the journey through Qigong and Tai Chi. And then, I was assisting at Yosan, Dr. Dao's class. And they said, you should teach here. And I said, no, 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 I could never be a teacher. I'm a, blah, 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 blah. I was a high school teacher, but I can't teach this stuff. I'm not a master or anything. No, no, we want you to teach. And so I always like to tell students that, become a teacher, get
Hmm.
certified in something, because if you can practice self-healing qigong, tai chi, a treasure qigong meditation, you can build a community, not just a practice. Because when people bond with you, it's your energy that becomes a walking
Yeah.
business card. Think about everyone that takes your class now has bonded with you. And and that's more exciting, because it's your energy that is your healing ability. It's just when you're talking to them, they feel it.
Yeah. Talk to me though. Medical qigong in the clinic. What does this look like? What does medical qigong look like when you're starting to work with people in a clinical setting or therapeutic setting?
Well, there's an intake, of course, and I actually think the intake is much more important. Um, I I am looking for anomalies in the intake. In other words, I'm
Mm,
looking for a word that doesn't fit. I'm looking for something that doesn't fit. I'm looking when they say a word, they look away. I'm looking for when they become a little boy and little girl and answer tiny. I'm looking
mm,
for a word like, well, I feel punished, but blah, 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 whoa, 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 I want that punish. I'm looking for uh, something that doesn't fit, because I'm dealing with big diseases in the cancer center. And so a big
mm,
disease usually requires a big dis-ease. I'm looking
mm,
for the big dis-ease, and I'm looking for that key doorway into what organ system or what I'm working on, what emotion. Not all cancers are emotional, as we know, but at the Cancer Support Center, I can actually say that about 75% of them, in my experience, are emotion based, internal.
mm,
And so they would lie on a massage table after the intake. I have an idea, because, if they have certain cancer of certain organs, we know something. And I'm not really an acupuncturist. I'm not going to go into the deep. My challenge is to balance them,
mm,
is to try and balance them. And when you have someone with a big disease, the first thing I have to deal with is fear.
mhm.
So people will say, "Well, how can you deal with a complicated cancer?" The elephant in the room is fear, and
Mhm.
fear is going to keep them from getting well. Because I always say to people, "Do you have a good health plan?" Everyone wants a good health plan, right? And they say, "Yes." Well, are you in fear all the time? And they'll say, "Well, yes, I am." Well, do you think fear is a good health plan? Because fear is planning on the worst case scenario. So my
Mhm.
job, I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you some affirmations. I'm going to give you some homework. I want you to start planning on being well, as hard as it is, even if you have stage 3 or stage 4 cancer. I want you to take at least 5 minutes a day, at least, and I want you to see yourself dancing or swimming. So, part of my practice is coaching and guided, because remember, qigong is internal guiding, and so
Mhm.
I'm doing the what uh, kind of Shen. There's Shen healing. Most universities don't talk about Shen healing, which is verbal medicine, where they just teach herbal medicine. They don't teach
Yeah.
verbal medicine, and it's a real big medicine. Epigenetics now is
Mm.
the big thing, and epigenetics teaches us that what we think or believe affects our cells immediately. So,
Yeah.
what I'm doing is verbal medicine. And then when I get them on the ground, when I get them on the ground, on the table, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off.
No problem.
Wait, I do that in class. I tell the students to turn their
Mm.
phone off, and then I forget.
Me
Oh,
too.
but anyway, they're lying on the table, and then I try to balance them based on what
Mm.
they've shared with me. Um, uh, Try to pull excess out of their body, because I can feel, that the excess. You become real good at sensing where the excess and deficiency is by just scanning the body, and that's what's amazing. Medical qigong teaches you how your intuition builds, and you start to feel more. And so I'm more of a balancer. I'm more of a craftsman, not a doctor. I think of myself as a human tuner.
Mm.
I'm a human. In other words, I look at them as I want to harmonize their instrument, and that will be a healing. So I'm looking to kind of harmonize. I'm looking to drain fear. I might say inhale courage, exhale fear. Courage is a breath away, and take that out of their body, out their feet, out. I'd say pop 10 corks on your fingertips and 2 big corks on the bottom of your feet. It would be kidney 1, but I don't tell them that.
Mm.
And I say, "Let's drain. Inhale courage, exhale fear." And you can see them calm down by that one saying is that nobody has given them, and that'll be their homework. Every time you're afraid, I want you to inhale courage, exhale fear. And you know
Mhm.
what? Courage is the metal element coming from the lungs, and the lungs
Mhm.
are supposed to descend and disperse. So I was talking to a doctor, and he says, "Of course, inhale courage. You're inhaling support from the lungs, telling them to take it all the way down
And then
and exhale fear."
yeah, and it's just like you're breathing it in, and it's like it's so powerful because people hold on to it, and we all hold on to our traumas, hold on to our challenges. But when
Yeah.
you breathe in courage, you are it's the first step in imagine someone wants to cross the street because on the other side of the street is something good. Well, there's going to be the fear of what happens if a car comes? What happens if it's sunny? What happens if I don't know the way? And all those fears start circulating in that person's space, and it prevents them from taking any steps.
Yes.
When what if I step into the road and a person comes along to help me? What if I take this chance and suddenly a cloud passes over my head and it becomes not sunny? So one of the fears that I had is not even coming up. But it takes a willingness to start with the breath and start saying, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to try something. And that's one of the powerful things to me is like one of the things I remember working with a coach who did a breathwork technique, and he would always start us off with the first technique was slowing down and telling ourselves, I have time to do this. I have time for this practice. He's like, everyone's rushing everywhere. Slow down and just take a breath. And, it reminds me because being a graduate student at Yosan, you know, graduate programs work, people's busy lives are exhausting at times. And you are the only person who can recharge your energy for the most part. Certainly there are ways that people can help you, but working, especially as a practitioner, working to develop your own chi is so important. Now, what are some key practices that you believe are essential for developing one's own chi as a practitioner?
Well, it can be anything. It can be breathing. It can be walking consciously and
Mm,
in a park, inhaling the medicine of the wood elements of the trees and the grass, the green. Um, Walking consciously and recognizing that the sun, the fire element, can strengthen you and calm your heart. And if
yes.
there's a water element nearby, inhaling it into the kidneys and lower body, and the earth, of course, digestion. Um, you know, I like to say to myself with using the earth element that I can digest my life.
Mm,
Because that's a key element. Most of the people with stomach, spleen, or pancreatic cancer, many of them are overwhelmed and can't digest their life, and so the affirmation from that is I can digest my life one step at a time, one bite at a time, one task at a time, and giving them confidence that. So I tell them, put their hands right on their solar plexus and say, we can, I can digest my life one day at a time, one breath, and just giving your digestive system that relaxing. And then, watching me, I was lucky enough to talk to him about 10 years ago. And I say in my self healing Qigong classes, I say, inhale courage, exhale fear. And my cancer patients, inhale courage, exhale fear. And he said, that's good, but you could also have them inhale wisdom, exhale fear. And I said,
mm,
well, what is what is wisdom to you? And he said, if you all knew who you really are, you'd never be afraid again.
Mm,
And that was like, you know,
yeah.
if you all knew who you really are, you'd never be afraid again. And so, I sell my classes. That's another option. Keep
Yeah.
reminding yourself who you really are.
I love that. Well, you know, I want to ask you this too, because you meet a lot of practitioners that are stressed or running around frantic, or they have their own internal states of dis-ease, not disease, but dis-ease. And how does a practitioner's internal state or cultivation affect their ability to facilitate healing in others? If they're not cultivating themselves, are they able to heal others, or are they going to be pulling from a source that is easily exhausted, that you maybe alluded to a little bit earlier?
Well, the medicine works, the needles work. I always tell Yosan students, some students come through Yosan, they're not interested in the chi cultivation at all. They just want hey, I want the medicine, the science, I'm out of here. And we get some of them. And I actually have learned to appreciate their focus. That's what they want. That's fine. But because the medicine works, the needles work. So
Hmm.
the needles you can do healing by just using the needles. It's the art of the medicine we're talking about, not just the science. If you could,
Yeah.
because if it was just the science, Hua Qingni and his sons, when they got to in Los Angeles in the late 70s, the schools were an embarrassment. They were
Mm,
2 or 3 year rubber stamp programs, no Tai Chi classes. It was just, and that's why it had such a horrible reputation, acupuncture in those days. And it was their father, Hua Qingni, that said, "Hey, we've got to start a school. This is not the way this was intended." There was an art to the medicine, Tai
yeah.
Chi, Qigong, meditation, where the practitioner, and the first motto of Yosan University is the reason I taught there. I was so excited when I heard it. A place where students can learn to become the medicine. So it's your choice. You can use the medicine and it works, or you can become the medicine. And that means that as you walk around in your family, your friends, you start to affect them medically, even if they're not seeing you in their practice. That's how you are becoming the medicine in your whole life, you know.
I love that. Well, what challenges or opportunities arise when trying to explain chi development in Western medical or scientific terms?
I start with health. I
Mm,
start with health. There's a lot of clinical studies now, that prove that Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation, mindful, all of that stuff is really helpful to, and they can list. We could list 100 things, but it takes them to do one study to list hypertension and another study, and you'll see that it's proven that Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, these are actually complementary healing modalities,
yeah.
and you know uh, they can benefit. I think every practitioner should have some qi gathering tool. In other words, a
Hmm.
qigong practice, a meditation practice, a tai chi practice, or just consciously. I love. There's one master in his book, Hui Nang, who said, walking around with poise. And that word poise really got me. Walking around consciously,
Hmm.
inside with poise, and not letting the outside grab you and take you away, but walking around. And that word poise is kind of fun to walk around as because I forget too, but I'm just saying some days I go, oh, am I coming from poise? That am I
Hmm.
am I coming from an internal watching? Am I paying attention? Am I getting sloppy with my family and arguing?
Mm,
I'm taking a feng shui class through College of Tao. And I
nice.
loved what Claire Canine, the instructor, said. You should treat every aspect of your life as a patient
Mm,
to heal. Your financial life. That's what feng shui. Treat it as a patient. Okay, where's the deficiencies? Where's the strengths? What about your family? Where's the deficiencies? Where's the strength? What about your nutrition? where are we eating properly? And if this was a patient, how would you heal this? And I loved looking at my life as a patient, my house.
I love
So
that.
the reason I have a screen behind me is the first step of feng shui is decluttering. And so behind the screen
Hmm.
is a mess.
I understand that.
I'm decluttering behind there.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you have to remove things to build things up. Empty your glass so that you can fill it up was one of the analogies that was in a
Yeah.
recent episode of the podcast. Is that sometimes you got to clean things out, and but again, it's coming back to that cultivation. If you don't even know what's in there, I was watching. The internet is good for some things and bad for others, but I was watching this video the other day with this woman, and I don't know why she had her car this way, but she seemed to be a hoarder of some type. And in the video, the police had pulled her over and were looking in the car. And suddenly they turn around and look, and there's a raccoon in the car. And it's like, and the guy looks at her. He's like, "How did you get a raccoon in the car?" And she's like, "I didn't know there was a raccoon in my car." And he's like, "You've been living in your car. It's like right there next to you." And the irony was that this lady had so much stuff in there that she wasn't able to pay attention to the fact that there was a raccoon sitting right next to her. And I was laughing and I was like, ha, 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 that's funny. And then I started thinking about my own life in the areas that there are things that exist in my own energy, my own life, my own field that I'm not aware of. I was stretching my back yesterday. I was laying down on the floor with a foam roller. And as I was stretching, I looked over right there, that spot right down there. And there's this space that I've got all this clutter. And because I never get down there, I don't pay attention to it much.
Yeah.
And I was struck by that recently when I was doing some yoga as well, when I was stretching and I was leaning down and I was touching my toes. And I just was like, well, hello, toes. How are you doing down here? I just don't give you much energy and attention. There was this fun video, not a video, it was like an infographic of where people spend the most time washing in the shower. And it was like head, face, underarms. It was like what everyone gets. But they're like, how often do you wash your shin or your ankle? And it's like these things that people, we have this whole energetic field, body that we are made up of, but we pay attention to a small percentage of things. And
Yeah.
there's yet so much more that needs to be made aware or just have its given it or breathing into, you know?
And you have to give yourself time for that,
Yeah.
and just step by step. Yeah, I thought that when we gave up baths, we stopped washing our toes.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like some days I think, I really don't really wash my toes very good. So anyway, I always thought it was when we stopped doing baths, because when you're sitting and you're there and it seems, but yeah, you're right. We all have a blind spot. We all
Yeah.
have a blind spot. We all have a raccoon in our house or in our life or in our emotions. And yeah, I had one this past spring. I went through a real bad period where like a mini meltdown, and I realized I was working too much.
Yeah.
And I had to finally face that. And it caused a lot of disruption in my life, but boy, I had to cut back almost half. I cut back doing this. So even though I thought I was doing good, which I was actually doing too much, and there wasn't that
Yeah.
balance of yin and yang. And so, I'm going to be 80 this year, and I'm still, I'm still embarrassed that I didn't get that one, that lesson. Like, you mean I'm 80 years old? I'm teaching qigong and tai chi. It's an endless journey. It's an endless journey and of lessons, and yeah.
Well, you look good for 80. That's for sure. And I'm sure that your cultivation has played a big part of that.
Well, yeah, I died on the operating table in 2000, and I went out and had a bunch of experiences and came back. And so I'm very grateful. I think herbs have really kept me because I
Mm,
lost most of my jing.
mm.
The doctor said, "Well, you used up a lot of life force to stay alive." So it took me years, and so my post heaven jing, my had to be restored, and it was through cultivation and herbs. And I think, I've pretty much been on herbs, which really helped me. From the Tao Wellness, uh, from Dr. Mao, Dr. Tao, and I think that has really helped me keep and restore my chi.
Where do you see, or where would you like to see medical qigong going in the next 10 or 20 years in the US?
Well, I think it's where there's plans at Yosan to gradually introduce it more into the clinic. And then I think after that comes about, uh, then I think the next step might be into hospitals as complementary modality. And some people say, "Well, how's that going to happen?" Well, Carolyn Mace, who the author of The Sacred Contracts, and she's a medical intuitive, and for well over a decade, she's worked at Mayo Clinic as a medical
Yeah.
intuitive, and so on the higher levels of medicine, they're experimenting and using it. Your average doctor is in your hospital in your town probably isn't getting it, but the top universities are looking into these complementary modalities, and the reason they are financially they're cheaper.
Hmm.
And that same thing with acupuncture. That's why acupuncture is kind of taught. Once the science came and the studies, they realized the medicals. This is very financially helpful here. This is not as
Totally.
expensive. And so that's why, we're getting these, and Dr. Mao and Dr. Dao have done a lot for that because they've worked in the top universities, USC, UCLA, and they've kind of prepared the groundwork for getting into hospitals and things.
That's awesome. If you could go back in your chi journey, in your journey of this medicine again, what would you like to do differently, or what would you study more of?
I wish I'd had a mission statement.
Mm,
Dr. Mao has in Taoism 3 at Yosan, the whole class is on mission statement and life mapping. You might want to Google life mapping. It's a wonderful whole new thing where there's you can map out your life, or a
mm,
project or your business. And what I've seen is I didn't have a good mission statement, or I hadn't sat down and said, "Where am I going? What am I?" Mark Twain has a wonderful saying. He says that the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you discovered why.
mm.
And
I love
I
that.
thought, wow, that's a great. Yeah, who knew Mark Twain was? I knew he was, you know, uh, somewhat wise, but that's deep. And um, so if someone had sat me down and looked at my strengths, looked at my weaknesses, and what I'm realizing, a slight word in your mission statement can change your whole life. Like I don't, I, I, I have a good living, but I work so hard to have a good
Mm,
living. So I asked Huaching Ni about years ago. I said, I have a good living, but I have to work hard. What is it? And he mentioned a bunch of things about feng shui and directions and stuff. But he said you could change that with affirmation. But I didn't
mm,
pay attention to that. I didn't know what he. And so that's a fault of mine. Is that I I want to. So I've changed my mission statement to easily prosper.
mm,
One word, easy. Then I noticed that in taking Dr. Mao's class that I don't. I'm competent in what I do. I do a pretty good job at whatever I do. But going into it, I'm terrified. I'm terrified of
mm,
this today. I'm just saying, because this is new. I was thinking, oh my God, I don't want to embarrass my. What is that? I'm 80 years old. I've been teaching for 35, 40 years. I, I'm, I kind of do a good job, I think. But so that terrifies. So I changed my mission statement. I
mm,
confidently educate and inspire. You see, and so I wish that someone had sat me down or I'd taken this course earlier in my life
Right.
because we spent like 3 classes with the students. I'm co-teaching with Dr. Mao and really trying to nail down a good mission statement and noticing and so I think my life would have had more excuse me, more flow, more direction. Because I was going around, "What am I doing? What am I doing? What should I
Right.
do?" And I didn't I didn't realize how important it is. You know, Khalil Gibran, the, Middle Eastern poet, philosopher, he said, "It's that life is like being shot like an arrow through the womb of your parents, and everyone has to clean off their arrow to
Hmm.
fly. So
Oh,
no one
wow.
gets away." So I always thought to myself, so part of life is cleaning off your arrow and then focusing. Huachini then said, another arrow metaphor. He said, "You know, you've already shot like an arrow into life. Don't you want to aim it? Or are you just going to go where you were shot? You know, through whatever, your religion, your experience, your family, your culture. Are you just going to follow that arrow? Or are you going to decide, well, where do I want to aim it, my arrow?" And so, yeah, that would have been so helpful to have some guidance and really sit down and spend time. What do I want to do with my life? And it would have saved me a lot of, I think, uh, side journeys. You know, trying to figure it out. It would have been very helpful.
But sometimes those side journeys make up who we are, you know? So
Yes,
it's like,
I don't want to deny that because I did have an interesting life,
yeah,
and it gave me what I call maybe a little more compassion, because of the difficulty. So sometimes those side journeys give us insight. You
yeah.
know, yeah,
The, do you ever see the inso, the brush painted circle that the Zen monks would draw? One of the things that always fascinated by me about that was that when you talk to one of those monks, they say that they're always on the journey to make a more perfect circle. They're always trying to make a more perfect circle, but then at the same time, every single circle that's drawn is perfect in its own right because
yeah,
it's what came up. And it's like, for me, this journey of chi cultivation, of learning, is kind of the acceptance that certainly I could try try to be better. I can try to be a better practitioner. I can try to be a better father, a better businessman, but whatever. But isn't this present moment beautiful? And I think that's where, when I transferred to Yosan. And I remember the first time I walked into the chi cultivation room, and I had been at a different school that was much more corporate, and it was just books, and learning. But then the first day that I was in there at in the chi cultivation room at Yosan, and we were just standing and doing a standing meditation, and there was a moment in time where all of my thoughts just kind of drifted away, and for the first time in a long time, I was able to breathe and not have fear, not have worry, not be thinking about tomorrow or yesterday, but just be. And I was just like, oh, that's kind of what they're talking about. Now, how can we help other people find that too? And that's kind of one of my favorite things. The professor I had was from China. And I was like, well, how does acupuncture work? He's like, you put the needles in the person's body and it kind of brings them back into their body. He's like, just imagine that you're pinning their spirit back in their body so they can come back into this place like, ow, oh, hey, there I am. Ow. Hopefully the technique is good enough so that it's not an ow. But it's like he's like, you're hooking them back up, where they've drifted off into the ether because they're just terrified of navigating life or whatever it is that's, making them pop out of their body, and you're just bringing them back in, hooking them back up. I love that analogy.
yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. If there was one thing I would have done, I've thought about your question again. There was a president who said it's about the economy, stupid. He became, as long as he focused on the economy, he became president. I for a while I had a sticky note. It's about cheese, stupid.
I love that.
And it really is. It looks like our problem's external, but like you said, it's being present. This too shall pass is one of my favorite lessons.
Yes.
Just breathe. This too shall pass. You know, and it is about going through the ups and downs and hills and valleys and breathing. Just being present, and that intention is more powerful than we think. The answers for our life come from sincerity. And this too shall pass.